One operational aspect the public does get to see is the launch. The launch is typically accomplished by two crew chiefs and the pilot. The A-man is the crew chief stationed in front of the jet and has overall responsibility for going through the launch with the pilot. During the launch, the A-man observes flight control movements, engine run-ups, and any other checks the pilot wants to go through. The B-man assists the launch by removing safety pins, verifying checks, and pulling the chocks. The launch is complete when the aircraft is marshaled out of its spot and begins rolling toward the runway. Once the jet reaches the end of the runway, the demonstration begins.
But I was basically at show center, I was right at about 250 knots. So it was right on the parameter that we're shooting for. The target airspeed is 250 knots. We're right at it as I'm hitting show center. But I didn't want to get into a real aggressive pull. The only time you ever see me do the real aggressive pull is if I'm closer to 300. The maximum airspeed for there really is no maximum airspeed for the pull, but the minimum or the target airspeed is 250, and that's right where I'm at. So I just do a nice smooth pull, but there was actually some vapor coming off the jet right as I went into the vertical there. So I saw that. I'm like, ooh, there might be a little bit of vapor in the air today. So that was good. So just make the nice smooth pull to about 75 degrees nose high, and then inch the nose up to 90 degrees nose high, making sure that it's climbing real well, which it was. And as soon as you cleared the tree line here, as soon as you cleared that tree line, there was a little bit of wind coming from the right, and so the nose actually hunted over, from this perspective, kind of hunted over to the right just a little bit. And I used a little bit of left pedal to kind of get it back straight. But as it went over the top, because it had that wind, it kind of came out, if you think about it, this direction. As it flopped, it came out kind of pointed at you guys, just a little bit. I'm talking 5 degrees, maybe, 5 to 10 degrees maybe. Probably not noticeable on the ground. Did you guys see anything on the ground? For me, it's noticeable, and here's why. Because as it goes over the top and it's in a high alpha type of a condition, if I'm not centered up physically in space, my flight path is now going straight down, but my nose is about 10 degrees off. So as it rolls, it's going to have more of a barrel roll looking effect than just appear about the nose of the jet roll. So we'll watch it here and just see if you can see. So the nose is hunting over to the right just a little bit. So it's falling. So now as it comes over, I'm pointed back at you. I mean, that's all well within the parameters and everything. I'm still above the minimum altitudes that I need for this. I need to be out of this and recovered by 2,500 feet, and I was well above that. Was it really that loud? The min radius turn, really nothing for the min radius turn. It comes around just fine. I'm right at about 280 knots, which I'm shooting for between 250 and 300 knots is what I'm shooting for as I exit the turn. So I'm right in there at 280 knots. I roll wings level just for a second and then pop it into the vertical. A little bit of vapor comes off the jet, which was good, and then push it back over right at about 2,500 feet, which is what I need for the J turn. As I pushed, it got a little bit slow. I was down at about 120 knots. Normally I would try and be at about 150, so I'm a little bit slow as I do this push over the top. So now as I enter into the J-turn, I'll pop the nose up. It'll go about 70 degrees nose high, but now since I don't have quite as much energy on the jet, it takes a little bit longer for the actual J-turn to develop. And as it does it, what's going to happen is the nose is going to slice over to the side a little bit, but then it's going to actually dip the wings up and kind of flatten it out, and it's going to look, the backside of it's going to look almost pedal turnish rather than J-turnish, which is what we're shooting for. As I came out, I bled a little bit more than I wanted to as I was going uphill, so I'm a little bit slower here at the top. I extend just for a potato or two to get a little bit of extra speed on there, but still as I go into this, it's a little bit slow, so flatten the thing out, and it's going to kind of rock around like that rather than just do a nice pure hammerhead kind of a maneuver. Again, the min altitudes on that, I'm still well above my min altitudes and my min airspeeds, so I'm within the parameters, but just visually that's what you're going to see on it. And so as I roll out, it throws those huge stabs, which have the same surface area as the wing of an F-16. It deflects those things to get the roll going. But now to stop that roll, it has to throw them again completely in the opposite direction. And I overshoot just a bit, not much, but just a bit. So you see it kind of do this little kind of extra bobble, and that's me just trying to nail it. But I didn't. I missed a little bit today. I was about 5 degrees or 10 degrees overbanked. So if you watch on the rollout,
internal combat bubbling flow. Ready your cameras as the doctor makes it home.
Right here, just a little bit over, and then it corrects itself back there to neutral.
Time, P, Phoenix, your answer.
Bays open up. Good to see we had 2 AIM-9s hanging there today, so that was kind of neat. Again, we can fly this in any configuration, so it doesn't matter if there's AMRAAMs loaded, bombs loaded, whatever, and AIM-9s loaded, it's all going to look the same. So today we had 2 AIM-9s. Talk about the actual pull on the dedication. Right here, I'll start it from about 4,000 feet, 3,500 feet to 4,000 feet is where I'll start. I'll do the tuck under roll on the Whifferdale reposition, and I'll start carving back in. I'm at about 300 knots as I'm carving back in here, and then I'll let the jet settle down as I enter the aerobatic container. I'll let it settle down to about 300 feet. I was a little high on this one. I was about 380 feet, but I was okay with that. I don't mind being a little bit higher than normal because the jet is accelerating so fast. It goes from about 300 knots to 0.9 Mach, which is right around about 580 knots is what I was hitting at the corner here. And on that pull, it accelerated from 0.9 Mach right at the corner all the way to 0.94 Mach, which is the absolute limit. And so I allowed it to creep up there. I'm on a hard stop pull almost the entire time, pulling between 8.5 and 9 Gs the entire way around that corner. But it's still, the jet still accelerates. So by the time, even though I hit the corner at about 580 knots, 590 knots, I'm accelerating past 600 knots on the backside of this on a 9 G pull, essentially the entire way around. The cool thing is at that airspeed, kind of a transonic region with that much G on the jet, you get some good vapor. So today we actually were able to get a little bit of vapor off the jet. So there you go. There's the big vapor puff that people see in a lot of the magazines and stuff. And of course, you know, I'd love to take credit for that vapor, but you know, look at what we had. We had, you know, humid conditions that just went away, and that's what generates vapor. You know, I mean, a lot of it is due to the aerodynamics of the aircraft, but a lot of it is due to the atmospherics that we have on any given day. So You know, sometimes you get lucky with the vapor, but it's just a function of the conditions you're given. So it was neat to see, though. I like it when it's humid like that, and we actually get the chance to see good vapor like that, because it really tells you a little bit more about what's going on with the aircraft and aerodynamically. So that was neat to see. Hop out of that, we get an ops check just to see how much gas is in the bag still, and it was at about 11,000 pounds, so I burned through about 4,500 pounds of gas so far. But the good thing is, less than 11,000 pounds, that means I've burned most of the gas out of the wing tank, so now we're ready to do some actual high alpha maneuvering. You don't need to do that, have the gas out of the bags to do the high alpha maneuvering, but just from a with the gas out of there, you know it's going to be symmetric every time. You know you don't have an imbalance of any kind. It's a good chance to just come down and cross-check and make sure all the fuel systems are feeding correctly, and that everything is going to be centered up as we start getting into some more of the maneuvering. Now as I come back in, I'm at 300 feet. Right at about 300 knots. I light the afterburners just prior to show center, and then go ahead and pull into the vertical as soon as I see those things lighting. I get established in the vertical, do a nice 360-degree roll, flop, and a nice 360-degree pedal, which goes right around. That's a maneuver that everyone thinks is, wow, how did it do that, that full 360-degree flat spin? And that's exactly what it is, but it's all wired into the flight control logic of the computer. So what it does is, as it flops over the top, so after I do that roll, the jet flips, and now all I'm doing is I've got the stick full aft, so it's basically just going to sit there and fall. And if I did nothing else, the jet would sit there and fall just like this at about 70 to 80 degrees angle of attack and just fall straight out of the sky. But I feed in a pedal input, so I just put the pedal all the way down to the floor to induce some yaw. And what that does is, unlike in a normal plane, if you put in the pedal input, it'll move the rudders over, and that's how you get any kind of yaw there. Well, the jet's only going 100 knots or so, and the relative wind is hitting it at about 70 to 80 degrees angle of attack, almost straight out the bottom of the jet. So what it does is, the rudders aren't going to do any good at that point, so because the airstream is hitting the bottom of the jet. So what the jet does is it uses the stabs to actually deflect. All right, so it tips the, usually it's the outboard one first that it'll start moving, and then it'll dip the inner one, and then it'll actually kind of chatter them a little bit and get the jet moving around. And you can see it on the tape as you watch. You'll see the stab will move, it'll dig in a little bit, and it'll start getting the jet yawing around as it approaches kind of the limit of what it wants to do without putting the jet out of control into a no-kidding flat spin, which would be really impressive. It gets to kind of its control limit, and then it says that's enough, and it'll kind of streamline them back out. As the jet's yaw rate kind of slows down a little bit, or isn't as much as I'm asking, it puts it back in. And that's all 100% controlled by the flight controls logic and the computers. I am not making any changes to my inputs in the cockpit. I'm 100% holding straight back on the stick with my foot flat on the floor, and I'm not touching a thing. So all the movement that you see out of these stabs, deflecting and not deflecting, deflecting and not deflecting, is the jet just riding up against kind of those limits that it has to just go ahead and roll itself around, so, or yaw itself around, excuse me. 360-degree roll, and then a pull as the jet gets to the high angle of attack here. And now right here, I'll start feeding in the pedal input. And so notice how the stabs are split right there. And it had, again, the outside stab. It actually deflects that one first, and it kind of drags the inside stab. And what that does is, think of it like a snowboarder or a surfer who's dragging his inside hand on the either the curl of the wave or on the snow, and that's all it's doing is it's just dragging that to go ahead and start carving around and pivot about that spot. And so this one was actually relatively smooth, but you see a little bit of chatter on the stabs there. And again, that's the computers. That's not me. That's making those things wiggle back and forth like that. That's just the computer saying, hey, the pilot is asking for X amount of yaw rate right now, so I'm going to give him that, and it just kind of make sure that it continues to give me exactly what I'm asking for. Out of that exchange, I come out of the pedal, I let it stop on about a 45-degree reposition line. I'm at 2,600 feet above my min altitude, which is 2,500 feet, to go ahead and come out of the that maneuver and break the angle of attack and start getting the jet moving forward again. And all I basically do is neutralize the controls. And that's another thing is in a normal flying aircraft or normal classically controlled aircraft, in order to stop that condition, I would have to counteract or go the opposite direction with the controls from where I was doing. Not the case in the Raptor. All I simply do is neutralize all the controls. Neutralizing all the controls, computer says, okay, the pilot doesn't want to do this yawing move anymore. He wants to stop, and so it just literally stops and starts flying forward again. And that's all that's going on there. So it's not me aggressively doing anything with the controls to stop it or counteract it. I simply stop asking for what I was asking before, and it says, okay, you want to fly straight and level again. Here you go. So off it goes. About 250 knots, right at 1,500 feet as I'm getting set to go into this this maneuver. I light the afterburner just prior to show center, confirm that I got good lights, that the engines are spooling up correctly, and then as I'm going through, right as I start to begin the pull there, verifying all that stuff on the displays that the motors are lighting, I'll just go straight back with the stick all the way to the hard stop and tell it just go ahead and go high angle of attack and pull over the top. So it should go like that. Something interesting that happened today, as the jet went up, it went up just fine, but now as it came over the top and it slowed down, it hung up on its back a little bit longer than normal, and as it did that, it's starting to get the kind of the whip effect where it's really going to rotate around that one spot in the sky. But what happened is, as the jet started falling again and the wind was kind of pushing it off towards the crowd, it starts falling and kind of pushing in towards the crowd. So from this angle, right as it's on its back, it starts kind of getting pushed that way. So now the jet starts to fall this way, but the nose whips around over here. So now, aerodynamically, the wind is coming a little bit from the left side of the airplane. So what that sets up is, as it comes around, the jet is actually falling, if you will, straight down, but a little bit actually kind of this way. So it's skidding kind of into the crowd in a high angle of attack. It's not a big deal. It's still well within the limits and well above the safety parameters in altitude and airspeed for this maneuver. But what it's going to mean is that now, as I neutralize those controls, just like I did coming out of the other maneuver, it's saying, hey, he's not asking for the nose to be right of where the wind is going. He's asking for it to be centered up. So what's going to happen is, as it comes out of this, it's going to actually yaw just a little bit. Again, we're talking 5–10 degrees, but you're going to see it. It's going to yaw just a little bit back in towards the crowd, and the nose is going to end up pointing a little bit closer to the crowd. So right here, the jet goes up. Everything's looking good. It's down the card, nice and centered up, and notice how it really hangs up here a little bit longer than normal before it whips around. And now right here is the jet. You notice that just that little bit of a yaw right there as it comes out of that thing. Nothing really of note on the loaded roll. The jet just loaded up to about 36 degrees angle of attack. Just let the thing roll around and come right back out of it. I actually gained about 500 feet during the maneuver, which is normally what I do, 400 to 500 feet.
It'll come up. It's supposed to be stop and stare. Right when he stops, and the side starts sliding down. You know, that song is almost like they wrote it for that aircraft, the stuff that it can do.
Concerned of, if I see one of the stabs as we go up, as the jet is sitting up there, what is apparent is any kind of yawing motion. If one of the stabs starts deflecting early, those are all indications that the jet's starting to maybe pitch over a little bit or yaw over a little bit, which is really all I'm concerned about on the slide. The jet's gonna fall. I mean, you know, I pull the power back and never use any afterburner, so the jet is gonna fall out of the sky. It's just a matter of keeping it within kind of the limits of side slip. This one was nice and stable. I never got more than about 1 to 2 degrees of side slip at any point in there. So it stops right about there. And now as she backs up, initially it's nice and smooth. The stabs start deflecting up there. Again, they're chattering a little bit. You see them start to deflect and, you know, kind of do this act where they're just kind of flopping. I'm not changing much in the cockpit at all. All I'm doing is smoothly and slowly just bringing the stick back. And already by now, by this point, I'm already on the hard stop, just holding the nose where it's at. What's going on is as the jet starts sliding backwards, the flight control computer is basically trying to put the nose back down because it says, hey, you're going backwards here. You probably don't want to be flying the jet backwards. You probably want to be flying this way if that's the way we're actually going to move. But what I'm doing is actively telling it, no, I do want my nose up there. So I'll do that and pull all the way to the hard stop and say, nope, I want to keep my nose right here. And it'll allow me to do that. And then approaching about 75 knots backwards or so, you know, okay, pay Newton his due. He made things fall, you know, for a reason, right? So I'll pitch the nose back over, and so we don't get going too fast in reverse. At 75 knots backwards, really all I do is just back off the controls and let the flight control computer put the nose where it wants to, which is going downhill. I came in at about 600 feet or so, 650 feet, and then loaded up the high angle of attack and kind of let it climb just a little bit until I got to my parameters, and then just held the pass by. Between 80 and 85 knots was what I was holding the entire time, and just modulating the power. And actually, something that's unique about this pass is you're on the back side of the power curve because we're not using any afterburner, so I'm just using kind of mill power. I'm actually controlling my altitude with the power. That's going to control how high I am as the jet just continues to move forward. And I'm controlling the speed that I'm at with my right hand with the control stick, because if I push forward just a little bit, the nose will drop down, the jet will accelerate a little bit. The problem with letting it accelerate too much is that if it accelerates at all, it's going to want to start climbing again. So now you start pulling the power again, and you kind of end up in this, you know, left hand, right hand, you know, pat your, you know, tummy, rub your noggin, whatever. What I've been working on and trying to do, as opposed to last year where we would fly way to the edge of the crowd line and then go all the way down, is I've been trying to keep it a little bit closer to the crowd and just let them see, load up the high angle of attack a little closer and just go past the crowd and then go, so it doesn't take quite as long. So don't know if we'll ever get back into the lyrics.
Roll over and split S, come down, and right as he's hitting the high speed and he's leveled out, you hear the up-tempo music.
And then right at 4,000 feet, rolling on its back, come back in a pure split S, and then start going the opposite direction for the high-speed pass. Okay. Acceleration on this pass is awesome. It's not quite as good as it was when we were doing the COMAC certs where we had the real cold weather. But I bottom out of that thing and I'm going about 350 to 400 knots as I come out of the vertical. And I'm intentionally not allowing the jet to accelerate too much in the vertical, because the last thing I want to do is come out of this split S maneuver where I'm pointed at the ground and be accelerating down towards the ground too much and now have to try and square the corner down here. That's something I don't want to do. So I allow the jet to come out of this at about 350 to 400 knots at a nice smooth kind of curve, and then now I'm going to just let the thing accelerate, which is mind-numbing, the kind of acceleration that you get in this jet down low. Like I said, I was at about 350 knots at the edge of the runway. By the time I'm at show center, I'm pushing 600 knots right up against the Mach. Okay. And again, a little bit of vapor in the air today, so as you see those kind of shot cones starting to build, again, only 0.94 Mach, that's all the most we can get to, but then as soon as I start to pull back, you actually see the airflow separation kind of approaching that transonic airflow, which makes a nice big cloud behind the aircraft.
maneuver.
The Hoover pitch works out real nice on this exchange. Nothing really of note, just a nice show to the crowd of showing them the top of the jet. I pause it there a little bit. I kick in a little bit of top rudder just to, or top pedal to go ahead and yaw the nose up to just hold it up there for a couple extra potatoes. Afterburners are lit, and as soon as I see that and I'm hitting show center, I'll tuck it under and then pitch. The only thing I don't like is with this is that pitch is now going to have to occur so that the burner cans are pointed a little bit at show left, and show center doesn't really get to see the burner cans. And I do that a little bit intentionally because I want at least half the crowd to get kind of that camera shot view of the top part of the aircraft before I tuck it under on them and pitch over here. If I tucked earlier and tried to square the jet up right on show center, then nobody down here would really get to see anything. So that's kind of not fair to the people at show left. So I'll hold this thing usually a little bit long and then pitch intentionally a little bit show left, tuck it under again, and pitch again. We'll do that exchange, and I'll come back in for another tack pitch here in a sec. So over there at show left, I just carve back in right on the 500-foot line at 300 feet, which is our kind of main parameters. Hit it right at about 300 knots, and then just set the lift vector at about 60 degrees of bank, and just square up the burner cans on the crowd.
No battlefield, your doctor simply will not dominate.
I'm doing essentially a hard stop pull. I'm not pulling high alpha at all. I'm just pulling it essentially until I get pointed 90 degrees away from the crowd, and let the afterburners shake the crowd just a little bit, tuck under, and then pitch again. Last two maneuvers. I just set up, we got a little extra gas, so since that power loop was the first one, since it went into it, and as it came over there, the nose waffled a little bit to the right and then kind of back to the left, that little bit of yawing on the backside of the power loop. I wanted to just go through and test the jet out and just go make sure it wasn't anything I was doing or the jet was doing. The jet's going to be a little bit lighter fuel weight now, so it shouldn't have any kind of imbalance problems or anything.
Power loop.
The jet's going to pitch at the exact same, it's going to pitch over it at the exact same rate. What the jet's not going to need is it's not going to need as much control surface deflection to do it because it's at a lighter fuel weight. The response from the jet, and that's another thing that's really unique about the Raptor, is kind of regardless of the configuration and what we're carrying, the jet is going to respond to my inputs the exact same way every time. It's always going to give me that same standard response. Now, as the jet gets a little bit lighter fuel weight, though, to generate that response, it doesn't have to move the control surfaces as much. Again, that's very, very different than a classic flying airplane where if you're not getting the response, the pilot manually puts in more controls to get the response that he's looking for. I simply put in the control movement that I want, which in this case for the power loop is just a straight pull back and hold it there, and then the jet will decide to move the stabs however much it needs to. And if it isn't getting the response it wants, it will move them more. So it's not me, moving it and then moving it more. It's me just asking for it and the jet deciding how much it needs to do. Set up for one more dedication pass, this one being from the opposite direction. The reason I did that wasn't just so we could set off every car alarm on base as I come cruising over the gym. It was because when we go fly these low shows, if we take off in the opposite direction, we end up flying the first half of the demo in reverse order, basically right to left or left to right. So it's something just to practice to kind of keep in the habit pattern, because even though left turn, right turn doesn't matter a whole lot, if you never if you only turn left every single time, you start to kind of get your skills start to get a little bit rusty. So I just wanted to do one more dedication pass from left to right, just to make sure that that everything was looking good, that hey, yep, the left-hand turn is going to work out exactly the same as the right-hand turn. Just get my cues for what it's going to center up on the airfield, make sure that I'm hitting the corners, markers that I'm going for correctly, and that everything's looking good with a left to right dedication. Again, the cool thing with today is having good atmospherics for good vapor. We get good vapor on the jet on this one as well. Interesting thing on this pass was I actually had to come out of afterburner right as I got to the show right corner a little bit earlier than before, because this one, again, now that I'm at a lighter fuel weight, I'm hitting a little more G than before. Like I mentioned on the previous dedication pass, the one up front when it was a little bit heavier weight, I was between 8.5 and 9 Gs as I was going through there. Now that I'm a little bit lighter weight, the jet's accelerating much more. It's getting into that G a little bit faster, and here at the corner it went right to 9.5. And after that we set up for one last little tack pitch, and that was just again another good chance to square up the burner cans on the crowd in this direction. I don't do any kind of a tuck under roll on this one. I just let the burner cans shake the crowd and then just pitch again and set up for landing. As soon as I'm out of that, the neat thing is I set the lift vector. What I tried to do was set the lift vector so that as soon as I pitched, I could just hold it there and with kind of minimal input just pitch again and be right at my pattern altitude. So now all I have to do is drop the gear and just start to turn back down to land. So was able to do that, hit those parameters right there. So as soon as I roll out, the gear come down. As it pops up to the pattern altitude, and automatically the gear, not automatically, but boom, I go for the gear handle. The gear and the Raptor are not an automatic thing. Yeah, exactly. I do earn my pay at least a little bit with remembering to put the gear down. So, yeah. Hey, if they could put a button in there that said aircraft land, I'd be all for it, Fellas, it was good practice. We got everything in that we needed to today. It was nice that the weather cooperated for us eventually, and we were able to get a good, solid high show practice in there. The music and narration looked good. The camera work was very, very good, and I liked what you guys were doing with the launch and everything. So great job rolling with the weather and the flexing to a later time, moving from base ops over to the 27th lines. All that stuff worked out really, really well. So that's all I've got. Good work today. What questions we got around the room?
Good. Good to go. Good. Get here.
All right. Good work, gentlemen.